All right, let's begin this hour with breaking news from the White House, where President Biden has announced he will offer pardons to U.S. veterans who were convicted of crimes under a military law that banned same-sex relationships. This follows a years-long CBS News investigation that revealed how LGBTQ veterans were still saddled with less than honorable discharges and, in some cases, criminal convictions more than a decade after Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed. Chief Investigative Correspondent Jim Axelrod has been on this story from the start. Jim, good morning.
Well, good morning, Vlad. The White House said people who were convicted under Article 125, a former military law that criminalized sodomy even between consenting adults, will now have the opportunity to apply for a pardon. The thousands who may be eligible include Air Force veteran Steve Morose, whom we first met and heard from last year.
As my sexual identity blossomed, I battled with how to live the covert double life that was required of LGBTQ military members at that time.
Steve Morose was an Air Force officer in the late 1980s before the military found out he was gay and put him on trial.
You were looking at 17 years in prison.
I was 5 years per sodomy charge and a year per conduct unbecoming charge.
He was sentenced to 2 years in a military prison.
I thought my military life was over, but in that moment, I thought my life was over.
Last year, when we spoke, he was still hoping for the day when the government would make things right.
They have the ability to look back and say, people who are hanging under the weight of something that is no longer valid should be made whole.
And today, word of that long-awaited redemption arrived. President Biden announced former service members who were convicted of crimes solely for being gay could apply for pardons, clearing their records and potentially having VA benefits restored.
It is, for many, a lifetime that they have been carrying this.
Jocelyn Larkin is representing a group of LGBTQ veterans suing the Pentagon.
It's a wonderful step forward, but there's so much more work to be done. But we welcome any recognition of the injustice that this group of people has been experiencing.
For Steve Morose, it's recognition that is decades past due.
What could be bigger than restoring someone's humanity? A sense of justice to somebody's life.
Especially if you're that person, nothing.
Steve Morose tells us he hasn't been contacted yet by anybody, but he is ecstatic to hear the news. Now, the pardons are not automatic. Veterans will have to apply to prove they are eligible. Once they receive that certificate of pardon, they can go to their military branch and apply to have their discharge characterization changed, which the White House says should unlock access to critical VA benefits down the road. The White House could not say how long that process would take or exactly how many service members this will affect, but this is huge.
Yeah, you touched on it briefly. My question, I'm thinking, how could a pardon change his life?
Yeah, well, so remember, he's a felon, right? So what does that mean? That means no access to VA benefits, no health care. Every time he applies for a job, he has to explain it, and there's no access to federal jobs. Every time he goes for a loan, right, or even applies to rent an apartment, he's got to explain why he is a felon. This could wipe all of that out and change his life.
Is he unable to vote as a felon?
Not right now, but he will be.
Wow. And just he's a felon because simply he was gay, and that was what he was convicted of. That is unbelievable, and this is a wrong that's finally being righted.
But you've been covering it for a while. Why do you think they want to take, the president wants to take it out
You
now?
know, that question has been asked. It really is unclear. He could have done it. President Biden, at any point in the last 3.5 years, could have granted the clemency.
Yeah. Could it be about the election?
Yes, I was just
We do not know. Jim, thank you very much. Appreciate your work on this.